been really thrilling and jaw dropping in paradise, to say the least. So now that we've had the big reveal and we've realized that although kind of monstrous, the power players weren't exactly the ones who killed President Bradford.
Hmm.
I mean, it was someone right under the radar.
Hmm.
So when you got the script, I don't know about you, but I was floored. What was your reaction?
Um, it was both complete shock and also like the biggest like, oh my God, of course. Like we don't need to look for somebody new. Somebody tried to kill the president and didn't succeed. That person tried to kill the president and succeeded. Like it was literally there the whole time. So, I'm
The
hopeful
entire
that our
time.
audience will feel satisfied that we have that answer. I think it was important to Dan to make sure that we concluded the season with a really good button of letting folks know, like, you have the answer to this. And also, now there's so many more questions leading into season two.
Yes, of course. And now that we've gotten a little bit of justice for President Bradford, which is also Nicole's lover,
Hmm.
do you feel like she can kind of move on from this now?
I think we see in some of the final scenes with Xavier and Robinson in episode 8, that there is the final release of letting go of someone that you've lost. In the sort of phases of grief, I think initially there's some denial, and there's some bargaining, and there's some, the different phases that she goes through trying to wrap her mind around the reckoning of what's happened to him. And now that he's dead, he's buried, and now his murder has been solved, now the real mourning, I think, happens. Like the real release happens. So I think it's a blessing and a curse, having his murder be unsolved gave her something to work towards. And now she has to find a new reason to be here. And I think Xavier gives that to her by saying, please stay here and protect my children. So she finds a newfound sense of purpose.
Yes, I definitely agree. And that's what I was kind of going to touch on because early on in the season, we see her kind of distracted, and not really stepping into her role as the lead detective
Mhm.
as she's supposed to. So, what do you think kind of flipped the switch for her and made her realize, okay, we have to start from the beginning and kind of step back into her role and complete her job?
We see it in episode 5 that Robinson is very much like a career servicewoman. So in service, there is a chain of command, and so she's following the chain of command with this collecting the evidence, beginning the investigation, presenting that material to the medical examiner, and having that response come back. And so she's trusting the system that is all around her. And then when she discovers that the samples never made it to the lab, that Sinatra may not be who she says she is, that she may be behind the death of Agent Billy Pace, then her whole worldview is flipped. She's been a good soldier for as long as we've known her. So much so that we see her in episode 7 be such a good soldier that she is popping mofos left and right and taking people out on the South Lawn. She's like, I don't care who you are, do your job, agent. So that is the backbone of who she is. And then her world is rocked when she realizes that she can't trust the government. She can't trust the people in charge. And so we have to take this system down ourselves. So I think there's a major shift in who she is in episode 5. And then we see that kind of gas her through the rest of the season.
Yes, definitely. And like you said, so in the finale, there's a scene with Agent Robinson and Agent Collins, and she emotionally says to him, "This isn't just about you," and it kind of shows the weight and gravity of the characters in the series who have always had that underlying integrity. So, moving forward, would you like to see more of that from Agent Robinson, potentially in season 2, and maybe even a backstory about her life before Paradise?
You know what, Morgan? From your mouth to God's ears, because that's exactly what I
Amen.
want. We see a slice of her life. We see her at work. We see her in bed, we see some of this romance, but something I think is really brilliant is that in episode 7, we get to see the everyman. We get to meet the custodian, who normally our world would just breeze on past. He's an older man, he's a black man, but we stop and we spend a little time with him to learn about his hopes to see his granddaughter for her birthday the next day. And then we do the same with the White House chef, who just says, "It's been a pleasure to serve you, Mr. President." So there are, thousands of little people, in quotes, who folks look past every day. And when we get to stop and learn more about them, it's such, it's illuminating, and it's useful for us because it teaches us about our own humanity. So unfortunately, we only have 8 episodes, so we didn't get a chance to unpack Robinson. But we have to assume that Robinson also has her family, also has maybe sisters or brothers or loved ones, or a romantic relationship that she left behind. She had a life before this all began. And when we meet her in the middle of her life at the end of this relationship, but there's a much bigger story to her. And I feel confident that the way that Dan Fogelman tells stories, I feel confident that he will give her the justice she deserves, and let us see more of Robinson as time goes on.
Yes, definitely. And there's a lot of simplicity, like you said, to the characters in the show. And then there's also a lot of layers and depth. And to speak on Dan's writing, in the scene in episode 8 where Agent Collins and Robinson are faced with the killer, the librarian, and he says something which kind of resonated with me. He says, "This is the American dream." And then in a few sentences later, he says, "But everyone should know that this is a grave site." So to me, that had definitely a deeper meaning, and it was very profound. And like you said, it makes sense that we see these characters in the White House, from the chef to just the person who would screen his calls outside of his door.
Mm.
And we focus so much also throughout the entire series on the power players
Hmm.
that someone slipped right under the radar, and they were living in quote unquote paradise with
Exactly.
everyone
This
else.
sort of lowly librarian, somebody, and if you go back and watch the season again, you will see that the librarian, I want to say Ian Merrigan plays the librarian. I want to say he's in like 7 out of 8 episodes. Like he's in all the episodes. He's there all the time, and every time people rush right on past him. And Jeremy, the president's son, is like, "Yeah, I'm looking for a CD player." And
Hmm.
then Cal runs by, "Yeah, I'm looking for this." Like people continue to just overlook him, and I think that that is the beauty again of this world, is that customarily when you tell these big stories, the focus of the story is on the president or the billionaire. And yes, of course, those characters matter, but really our world is through the eyes of Xavier, who is a career serviceman. He's a bodyguard, he's a secret service agent. Like this is a person who normally is just a fly on the wall watching the world go down. So I think, like, as the season goes on, we start to highlight and zoom in, with your fingers zooming in on these different worlds to see who is this person. Like you mentioned, his receptionist who's been with him since his first campaign. Like, who are they? Who is her son who's at the gate? Who is Robinson? I think that is at times more compelling than these big characters, these big, powerful characters.
Well, definitely. And I want to thank you for taking the time out to speak with me on today. And I do have one last question for
Yes.
you. So, what would you like to say to the fans that have been tuning in week after week, getting online, posting about how exciting, thrilling, and just getting everyone pulled into this series? If you could send a message to the fans, what would it be?
Thank you. It is just thank you. And I mean that. There is so much wonderful television out there, and it's so hard to break through all of that great TV to find an audience. We have found a really engaged and excited audience. We've also found a big audience with women and with women of color, which I did not expect at all. And that makes me so happy. I love
Yes.
also, just from a personal standpoint, I love seeing when major networks put time and energy and money behind shows that have Black people as the lead cast members. That is important. It's important to me so that diversity, inclusion, and initiative, that DEI is not just something folks hang their hat on, but you actually put your money on. You actually write the check for that, so that you don't just talk about having Black people in leadership positions, but you actually give them leadership positions. You actually make them the lead of the show, put their face on the billboard, put money behind it, so that the show looks great, that it's high value, that it's high budget, that it's motion picture, major box office type of material shown on screening, on streaming. And that to me is so exciting. So when a studio like 20th and a network like Hulu puts that kind of energy into a show helmed by Sterling, and then the people pick it up and they give it back to us, that love, that adoration, that excitement, it's just a powerful cycle going back and forth that we can continue to allow Black actors to be the front, and that their audiences and many other audiences will be there to have their back and make it
I
the number one
couldn't
show on TV.